Mediocre Rumble Brothers. 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome to Mediocre Rumble Brothers. I'm Jordan, your host, and the team Corey, Edwin, and Udon. Today we'll be doing our special on the Mario and Luigi Brothership video game. But before we start, please be sure to follow us on Spotify channel and like and subscribe on our YouTube channel to stay up to date with our upcoming episodes. It really helps us out. So with today's episode, I want to be sure it's handled properly, so I'll be passing it over to Udon. Go ahead, take it away.
Well, you could do it properly. You do all the other episodes properly.
Oh, that's so sweet.
But yeah, so we're doing Brothership today, and usually I would open up with like a little bit of trivia about the game series, but I mean, other than this being the latest in the Mario and Luigi series, which started with Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga on the Game Boy Advance, I haven't kept up with the series too much. I played Superstar Saga, and I believe they had like 3 or 4 other games after that, like Bowser's Inside Story and like Brothers in Time and things like that. And I think most of them were on the DS as well. But they're kind of like the spiritual successors to Mario, like both Mario RPG and Paper Mario, because they were now the new Mario themed RPGs with just Mario and Luigi as your two characters going through worlds, leveling up, doing quests and all that junk in the Mario universe. And it's been quite a while since the last one, and I don't think anyone was expecting this game. And it's a weird contrast between how this game is compared to like Superstar Saga. Lots of similarities, but like holy fuck, this game is way bigger than like what any of us were expecting. Because it's like, yeah, it's an RPG, but it's a Mario RPG, so you know it's a little baby RPG, so we can get through this, right? It's like, nah, they took this as seriously as like a fucking Final Fantasy or fucking playing Persona. Like holy fuck, the amount of time you have to put into this game coincided to only me actually finishing it. And Corey and Edwin both are close to it, but they're on like the pseudo climax, and Jordan was busy, so he didn't have the opportunity. But I've seen plenty of gameplay of it, plus Corey showed it to him when you guys are visiting, because everyone's visiting each other recently. So anyways, we're going to change how we typically do our breakdowns. It's going to be less of a breakdown and more of an overview of the game. We're just going to touch on the biggest like main topics of the game, give everyone's opinions on it. Try and remain spoiler free, because this game does have a story, but it's not it's not Shakespeare. You're not going to be ruining too much if you wanted to talk about anything that happens in the late game, me especially. So we're just gonna. I don't have them in any particular order, but so we're probably gonna be jumping all over the place in terms of the game, touching on different points of the story. We're not gonna be breaking down everything in anal detail. So I guess to start with, I was just gonna try and put this in order of the things that come to mind as you play the game. To start with, I wanted to talk about like the graphics and art style of the game, because that's the first thing that hits you when you look. Obviously, you boot up a game, is the first thing you see. This Mario and Luigi is in 3D. The camera perspective is still the same as the other Mario and Luigi's, which is like a top-down, looking down from the top of on the two brothers on a kind of like Diablo-esque in the world. But now we're in 3D as opposed to pixel art, which I believe all the other ones have been pixel art. I don't know if they ever evolved past pixel art, even on the DS. So I want to have our first round table just specifically talking about the game's looks, its graphics, its art style, and especially to even talk about like the themes of everything, about how like these new creatures are the new like townspeople, these plug people. If you have anything to say about their design, but we can go ahead and we'll just start with Jordan on all of them, because you probably have the least amount of say on it. Not because just because you haven't played it. That sounds bad. No, but yeah, go ahead. As from what you've seen of it, how do you like the looks of the game?
I mean, for me, I actually was enjoying it best by watching somebody playing it. There was a lot of color. They did spend a lot of time in details, it looked like, for the levels when you're walking around. They're not just specifically open plain, just levels with just some trees and such. There's actually some actual detail to it. They did add some new characters by what I was seeing that I have never seen before. They're like those little outlet-looking creatures that are now part of the story, and then there's some different monsters that you come across that you're always going to be doing some battle with. So it's just like there's different things along the way that you're going, and I did see that they've gone to do some cell shading that's pretty nice. It looks really cartoony, so kind of keeps you in the deal that you're like feeling like you're watching a cartoon while you're playing the game. And then just in the midst of everything, there's just a lot of detail. Apparently, a lot of detail. Apparently, with how long this game is. I mean, I actually haven't played it, but I did enjoy watching Corey play it. I thought that was kind of cool.
Now, do you think it looks like Mario? Like, would you look if Mario and Luigi weren't in the picture and you saw a couple screenshots of this game? Could you imagine it being in the Mario universe?
Yes and no. I would say yes by how the designs of like they do the trees and such. Like they're very different than your normal trees. And then of course just the level layout. But it's just kind of different for me since everything is now related to this weird outlet looking thing, and then the split of the islands and such. So it's kind of a toss up. But I would say yes, it could possibly still be of a Mario feeling.
Okay. We'll do Edwin next. Edwin, what do you feel about the visuals of the game?
So, I mean, that's what took me to play this game just by itself. Is just the trailer, the animation, and the art style were just all very neat looking and just so pretty and colorful. But like when I actually played the game, it just like the combat animation between Mario and Luigi was my favorite part. These Yeah, it was mainly all that. The thing that did bother me about the fact that it's the outlet and like plug people. It's like the whole story revolves around electricity. The part that was weird about it is just like it. I know like what the story is, and it's one just one big island broken apart. But it's still kind of weird that the whole thing revolves around electricity just out at sea. It just gives the thought that it's just like electrocution and it can happen anywhere if you fall in the water. So that's just a weird part for me. But the new characters, I mean, the enemies are pretty neat looking later on. The beginning is always like kind of basic. But like all the, I guess, plug people or outlet people, or what is it? Watanist or something?
No, that's Connie's occupation. I don't believe they don't have like a name for the race of people they are. They're just the Concordians. They're from Concordia, which is the world. So I don't think they have like a name for what they are.
Okay. Well, I mean, they're pretty unique looking. I did find it weird. It's like based around electricity, but there's like some that like very clearly aren't like outlets or plugs or electricity based. So I mean, it's a little bit weird, but I mean, it just brings more uniqueness to, I guess, that world specifically.
And what about you, Corey? What do you think about the visuals?
I really did enjoy the art style. Like as soon as I saw the trailer, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of different." Like the way that they, they look recognizable. Obviously, the characters are very iconic, but when you're like comparing it to how you typically see Mario, like they're kind of, I guess, less rounded, and they're more in proportion to like a person, kind of like because Mario is usually just like, a round boy, and I feel like they're just more unique like characters in this one. They also have a nice gradient and everything. The colors pop so well everywhere you go. That's something that I really enjoy about the game. Like I don't think, even though like I don't like desert levels and stuff, but I don't think there was a single island that I went to that I wasn't just like enjoying the scenery, I guess. So they did a really good job on that. It kind of has a weird mix of like almost Animal Crossing, and like that, not quite Link's Awakening, but very stylized, but very bold. And they used Unreal Engine 4 for it, so like they really kind of pushed texture quality and stuff for this game. So it's really like tailored well for that. I like the way it looks, so I think they did a great job on that.
Yeah, and in my opinion, I very much like the colors, and I think specifically what Edwin was saying about the trailer is that about the animation. The animation in this game is really nice. They're not afraid to get really squashy and stretchy, very cartoony with how Mario and Luigi move and their like facial expressions and stuff like that. It does remind me very much of how Superstar Saga was in terms of art style. Like they, because in every Mario and Luigi game, I believe there's just like it's always like a new place in the Mushroom Kingdom or some place surrounding the Mushroom Kingdom. So there's always like they have to come up with like new architecture, new creatures and stuff like that. So they have a lot of fun in like expanding the Mushroom Kingdom mythos, even though in this game we're nowhere in the Mushroom Kingdom at all. Mario and Luigi literally get isekai to where they are. But yeah, I very much enjoy the visuals. The animation is my favorite part. I like the colors and everything, as I said. Um, but aside from that, say about the visuals, I guess the anime, like I said, the animation is what sticks out a lot for me. But so second after animation and like the art style, this game is an RPG, and as we learned, they are not fucking around with the term RPG because this game is roughly. I mean, it took me just under 40 hours to beat the game and do like 95% of the side quest, which is basically most of the content the game has to offer. That's a long fucking time for a Mario RPG. I don't remember how long it took me to beat Superstar Saga back in the day, but I don't think it was 40 hours. Um, but anyways, so as far as the story goes, we have an opening of Mario just taking a walk around the Mushroom Kingdom, and suddenly Luigi comes busting in, being chased by bees because I don't who the fuck knows what Luigi was doing to piss off a bunch of hornets, but I guess he was playing Animal Crossing or something and looking for some money in the trees and getting stung. And so Luigi, as these games have kind of established, really played with his character trait of being a coward, which they actually do a lot with Luigi in this game. That kind of expands the character a bit more, which I kind of like. But we'll get to that later. But so he's being chased by bees, freaking the fuck out, and Mario's chasing after him, trying to get the bees away from him or calm him down, one of the two. And eventually, Luigi basically just runs off a cliff, and Mario catches him. And then, as their hands clasp, there's like this glowing light of their brothership bond, I guess. And then, like literally, just like a twisting vortex opens in the sky and sucks up them, sucks up Peach and a bunch of Toads, and sucks up Bowser Jr. and like half of his army and his airship into who knows where, right? And so you wake up as Mario on a random island and you travel around a bit and you find Luigi and you finally make your way off this little island that you find and get on top of this big old ship-shaped island. Like it's an island, but it's shaped like an old-fashioned sailing ship. Where you meet this little character named Connie, who's one of the Concordians. So she's like a little plug person. She basically explains to Mario and Luigi that this place that they find themselves in was called Concordia, and they used to have a big old civilization here of a bunch of islands like linked together by this big wattage tree, this big old tree in the middle. And then, as Edwin said, everything's based on electricity and plugs and stuff like that. It's not like a bunch of power lines everywhere. It's like basically like magic, like little magic lines, I guess. I don't know if it's specifically meant to be electricity, but anyway, so this big tree in the middle of the islands used to keep it together, but then someone destroyed the tree, and all those islands started drifting apart. And Connie is what they call Watanist, which is, I guess, one of the people that looked after this big tree. And she's trying to grow a new tree on this island in hopes to like bring all the islands back together. And she's being helped with this by a little character called Snoutlet, who's this little like flying pig looking thing, even though he keeps telling you he's not a pig.
Yeah.
So Snoutlet's going to be Mario and Luigi's like little companion character for this game, and Mario and Luigi, being the good guys they are, decide to help Connie put all the islands back together. And so that's like your basic setup for the story. So for the rest of the game, Mario and Luigi are trying to help out Connie by going to all these different islands and doing missions there to reconnect them to this bigger island, so where they're all. It's kind of cool that they like you connect them with this big plug thing, and then the big brothership, as it is, drags them along, and this big like convoy thing, which I think is fun, like kind of a fun visual. But And that's the setup for basically the entire story. And I will get into different points here and there with the story further on, but that's about as breakdowny as I'm going to get for this episode without just saying random things here and there. But that's a setup for the story. And I'm going to open it up to the rest of you, and you can pick and say anything about any character throughout the rest of the story that you want to talk about. It doesn't matter. We can pick and choose anything. You don't have to just do what I just said. But me personally, I rather like the story. It's not Shakespeare, obviously. It's not anything, you're not playing Persona or ReFantasio. Like, it's not like this deep, meaningful story that has like social context and all this other nonsense dealing with it. It's just a simple story with a theme as being around connections with people, a la the plug people and the electricity, which is just the thing they decided to go with to help reinforce their point. But you meet a bunch of characters along the way that I thought were pretty memorable. The main bad guy, at least for the first part of the game, is called Zocket, and his team called the Extension Corps, which are just a bunch of bumbling assholes that fuck up your day when they feel like it. And then you have, I already mentioned Connie and Snoutlet, and then later you're going to encounter a team called the Idol Group, which is another people that, a couple group that helps you out, and Tech Nikki, who who basically builds gadgets that power a lot of the brothers like super moves, their bro attacks. And I rather like it. I really like how a lot of these characters come together, and it actually feels like Mario and Luigi are working with like a team of people to help put all these islands back together. Like, it's not just a bunch of people standing around being like, so you get around to fixing all of our problems yet? It actually feels like they're trying to actively take place in the story and like accomplishing things that Mario and Luigi couldn't do, or doing stuff while they're off doing other things. And I like them. They're there again. They're not, you don't form a super personal connection with them like you do with like Persona characters per se, but I really enjoyed them. I liked the story, and it does drag a bit. There are a few points in the story, especially later, where like Bowser shows up Bowser shows up way late into this game, like 3/4 of the way through is when Bowser finally shows up, and he basically sets you back to like he disconnects some islands and sets you back, and that's really aggravating. And there's like a fake climax to the game where you think you're about to beat the game and you really don't, and there's probably another 7 hours of gameplay after that to do before you actually beat the game, which that again in and of itself is pretty fucking aggravating. I can't imagine. I don't understand why that was a thing. But yeah, aside from that, I'll open it up to you and see, because I'm genuinely curious what you guys have on the story. So, Jordan, again, you only watched portions of it, so I don't know if you're paying too much attention to the story or you're just looking at the gameplay or anything. But do you have anything to say about any of the characters that you saw?
I mean, I'm just happy to note that, even though it's been a long running with Mario and their series of different games, that they've done in the past, the fact that they still came up with something and trying to be as original as they can. I mean, I really appreciate that, especially with making games for today being as long as it's been. So, I mean, I have not really paid too much attention to the story, but I did know it was like kind of like the original Pangea. I mean, they had world all connected together by that one tree and then separated. So now you're going to all these different areas or little mini / continents, or if you will, and just trying to figure out what's going on. But really about the story, I'm not sure. I just really did like the idea that, by what I've been hearing, everybody seems to enjoy the game that came out, and now seeing Corey had put something in the chat or about these different. I didn't know there was more than one Mario and Luigi of these things, so I might have to start looking into those as well and see exactly what they're about. There's a cool one that I just saw. It says Mario and Luigi Paper Jam, and that's where I was going to say is that it kind of reminds me of the battling system, which I'm sure you guys will talk about here in a little bit, but I did think that it kind of reminded me of Paper Mario, which I was like, oh, that might be a game for me to try.
Hell? Sorry, I thought I heard my cat. Anyway, yeah. No, I can agree to that, and I would say an easy access to you is that they have Superstar Saga if you pay for the Nintendo Switch expansion pass or whatever. They have it on the GBA emulator thing, the Superstar Saga, which is the first one in that series, which is my favorite. But anyways, Edwin, do you have anything to say about the story or characters?
So the only other Mario and Luigi game that I actually played the entire way through was Bowser's Inside Story. I found that one was a bit more unique than Brothership. Brothership still stands on its own for how neat it is. But Bowser's Inside Story was you're literally inside Bowser, and then you can just go throughout his body and then solve his problem from within himself to like give him like a super strong punch by building up his muscles on the inside, or just like fixing some health issues that he has internally, and then he just feels better on the outside to take on the outside world, while also not to unknowingly helping Mario and Luigi that he doesn't know are inside him. But so compared to that, just doing like a two-way thing between Mario, Luigi, and Bowser, it's just a bit more interesting than just running around collecting islands from Brothership. The story is pretty simplistic. I mean, it's like the complexity is like not at all there, for me at least. I kind of solved the entire. I kind of knew the plot point like halfway through the game, and then when they finally revealed it, I'm just like, yeah, I kind of knew that several hours ago. I was like, you beat the game in like 45 hours, and I'm still like a few hours away. I'm at like 61 hours so far, but I'm doing as much as I can. There's like a lot of things on the side that you can do. There's challenges. There's well, I'm ignoring the challenges for the most part, but they are progressive throughout the entire game. So you're gonna do a few of them depending on how you fight. And then there's the grandpa tournaments, which I'm completely ignoring because it's kind of pointless to me. And then there's like side quests, and then the sprites bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of power up your battle plugs, which is the interesting mechanic. However, what's the main? It's like the main new mechanic of the game. But as interesting as it is, it's like a double-edged sword. While it's very helpful and interesting to use, it is incredibly infuriating to like actually use continuously at certain times, because there is no easy way to refresh them. Because the way that they work is each one has a specific effect. You collect them throughout the game, and that's what the sprite bulbs are for. Is basically your currency. So it's like they each do a different thing for you during battle, and then once you use up all their charges, then they have another charge, but that's the recharge. So depending on how strong it is, it'll take that many turns during battle for it to recharge, and it can go from usually 15, and the highest I've seen is 40. The problem with that is that because of how powerful some of them are, it can take a really long time, and there's no way to recharge them besides just wasting turns in a fight. You cannot charge them outside of a fight, and you can't charge them. You can't recharge the turns that you've already used. You have to use all of the charges and then go into recharge and then recharge it. So it's just a huge pain in the ass to go through an entire section of the game, and then you make it to the boss fight, and then, well, to get through the other parts of the game, you already used up some charges, so now you have to waste like an hour or so, maybe not that long, but as like a certain amount of time just to get all the ones recharged fully for the very obvious boss fight that you're going to be doing. So it's just infuriating parts like that are throughout the game. It's just a lot of fluff that is like between combat or between story progressions that are very annoying. It's like I understand the world building, but it happens way often, and just it's not as meaningful as they expect it to be, because it's just a lot of kind of the samey kind of things. Because like, yes, it's like everyone's like friends with each other, but it's like it's kind of bare bones writing. and it's just not very interesting. So it led me to the point of what I usually do when I'm playing a story game. It's like if it's not part of the main story, I'm just skipping the dialogue, because if it's not part of the main story, this is probably the only moment that it's going to matter. So it's just really annoying kind of filler writing, even for some of the side quests. But there are some side quests that are pretty challenging. It's like some puzzles, and then especially the boss fights that you can redo for like a better version of the original reward. And some of them are harder than others, and some of them are pretty bullshit. I know Corey was complaining that he had issues with Bowser, but I had something completely different. And it was like took like about 3 hours. That was like probably the second issue that I had. The first one was entirely my fault to do, because like in Mario RPG, there is a reward for jumping on an enemy 100 times consecutively, and in this one there's something like that, but its reward is pretty okay. I only got it because I didn't know that there was a similar reward of weaker power, but I could just buy it rather than spend, I think, like 6 hours trying to do that 100 hit combo. So that was my fault. So that's kind of where I went into a somewhat downward spiral when playing the game in the beginning. But there's a lot of good parts. A lot of the islands are really unique and very different. The enemies, they're not super hard. They're just kind of everywhere and just kind of hard to avoid. But I mean, if you're playing an RPG and you're gonna bail on XP, then you're just gonna have a harder time in the later part of the game. But I mean, it's like I'm just trying to get through like the previous islands just so I can get this one thing that I couldn't get to. There's a lot of islands. They're all very different. It's kind of weird that it's like this one giant land has both a desert and a metropolis, and that was a little weird. I think my favorite island was the ice island. It was just really cool. I liked it. Try not to get too far ahead.
Well, you're kind of all over the place. We'll talk about. It's like I asked about gameplay, I asked about story and characters, and you went off about the gameplay. We're gonna get to that in a second. But I mean, when it comes to the writing, I mean, it's a Mario RPG. I'm not expecting it to be anything crazy because it's a children's RPG. That and playing the other ones, I wasn't expecting anything deep. I was expecting like kind of in the same vein of like Paper Mario. Like I enjoy them because usually the writing is just like witty or just has some good jokes in it or something. Like it's just funny. They were trying to be a bit more serious with this one, which I can respect them for it. I mean, serious in the fact that it is like somewhat of a serious matter about being connected with people and not being holed up in your own little world. I mean, maybe I looked too far into it, but what I got from it eventually, especially in the climax of the game, which neither of you have seen, that they really kind of beat you over the head with the message when all the characters are being like sucked into these like weird plant things that the main bad guy creates, and it like makes like a perfect world for them and like this weird VR thing. It's like I think it's trying to hammer home. It's like don't get caught up in your phones and your TV shows and whatnot. Go out and be connected with people. Yada yada yada. I can't help but feel like that's what it's trying to hammer home a little bit, and I'm fine with that. I like that kind of messaging. They just really take too long and really like I'm on the ground begging them to stop, and they keep hitting me with this bat, being like, do you get it yet? And I'm like, I got it like 8 hours ago, please stop. Man, but and you have to keep going, and they keep reiterating the same fucking point to you over and over again. That's where it becomes a bit repetitive for me.
Yeah, it's like throughout those like the last few hours that I played beforehand, there was like a lot of dialogue of just like togetherness and bonds. I was like, oh god, it's like I'm watching that fairy tale, which is all about friendship.
Well, yeah, because it's at the end of the game, you have to like basically do you do like a victory lap of visiting all the like the people you've seen on your journey though so far to collect their like bond energy, I guess. And every time you see them, it's just the same thing over and over again. It's just like, yeah, we're friends, or yeah, we love each other, yeah, bonds, woohoo. And I'm just like, cool, I got it. And you have to do that like what is it, 6 times? And I'm just like, it's the same. You're telling me the same fucking thing over and over again. And not only that is that a lot of the characters that you see during that sequence, I feel, do not have the same level of bonding as others. Like some of them are very superficial, but so it kind of they kind of lose their own plot in certain aspects, and they make it really repetitive in terms of what the message is. But it really only is painful during that last like pseudo climax. Other than that, it's fine throughout the game. As far as this side quest not meaning anything, it only means something to you if you don't really care for the story, because there's a certain part in the game where you have like Technicky, who's your main inventor, but then you have to upgrade your ship shape to get into a certain place, to get into like one of the last places of the game, and you recruit a different engineer to help out, and you're said to choose between these two people, but if there's a side quest earlier in the game where you basically go more into Technicky's backstory and you actually learn about that other inventor, which if you had skipped that side quest, you have no idea what this person is when you got to that main quest, when you actually have to deal with that person in the game, which I thought that was interesting. So you had like a little bit, you're a little bit rewarded by going to the side quest being like, oh, I remember that person about the side quest. I remember who this person is. So you're kind of expecting who it is already instead of just being like a whatever nobody. But yeah, I have bitching to do about some of the challenge quests, but that's what makes it challenge quests. They're supposed to be hard, but some of them, I think, just the game mechanics themselves shoot themselves in the foot. But we'll get to that. Corey, what do you think about the story and characters?
The story is not complex. Obviously, we've kind of beat that in. It's very straightforward. Just right off the get-go is just we're trying to reunite the world through this ship, but kudos to them being on theme with everything, because it's really interesting how everything is just so like they're like, all right, we walked into a Best Buy and we turned all of this into a world that they're going to be in, with character designs, the verbiage they use for stuff. I mean, you're on the Brothership, with it's fun.
A lot of
I
puns.
think. Yeah, there's a lot of puns. I mean, the games themselves over the years have been kind of humorous, so like this game does kind of fit into that as well. Though it's simple, it's not like annoying me, because I've played some games in the past where it'll be like, the jrpg trope of friendship. I think there was a Star Ocean game I played on 360, and I stopped playing it because every time you met a character and they'll be like, will you be my friend? And I'm like, ugh, this means they're going to join my party. And it was just so corny. But like, as simplistic as this is, it kind of delivers itself at a decent pacing. And it's just kind of fun, not without challenge though. That's the other thing. It's like a really weird display of like, it's a Mario game, but it's going to kick your ass at sometimes if you're not paying attention correctly. I like the little worlds. I like how they're themed. I like how they fit with all the other, like, even though everybody's kind of like a plug person, they're all like, they still have like outfits and designs to them, to the world or the island that they come from, and each island is its own little contained environment for you to kind of explore, and they take about an hour to explore each one. I was kind of concerned about how many there was going to be, because of how big the map is, but it ends up being a lot less than I thought it would be. But there's way more open water. It kind of feels like original Wind Waker. But I think it was solid pacing. Very slow in the beginning though, especially with like how you're discovering like your power and stuff. So like you don't have a lot of the moves yet because everything's kind of given to you over like as the quests evolve. Like you have the engineer that is like, hey, you guys should take this item, and then now you have a new thing that you can do. So it takes a while for you to like have like way more engaging combat because the story is kind of keeping you from having those abilities. Because instead of you finding it in like a treasure chest or whatever, the game just it opens up all of these things to you as you play through it. It is kind of handholdy in that way, but at the same time, it's the part where it starts to feel annoying is like once you get to like the halfway point of the game and you start to realize there's a lot of game padding in the things that they'll have you do, and it kind of extends the gameplay, but to me, it's not as fun when you extend gameplay through game padding. It just becomes this like, well, I got to get through it now. And as like played Paper Mario games and played Superstar Saga, and I played Mario RPG and the remake that had come out. I think it was like last year or something like that. I think Mario RPG's story is better, and it has like a more fun cast of characters for your party. But that game is meant to kind of appeal to like Final Fantasy fans more than this one because this is just Mario and Luigi, and I kind of was hoping that thered be a dynamic of like Bowser and Bowser Jr. in this, and I kind of wanted them to kidnap Bowser Jr. or even Bowser, and then maybe Bowser Jr. joins you and you have 3 people in your party, and then it would have been like, oh, that's kind of crazy, this is neat in a character that you don't normally use, because in Mario RPG you get Bowser on your team, so I thought maybe they'd switch that up because with whatever the gloom stuff they're using later in the story, they kind of infect Bowser with it, but it's only for like one moment, and then there's a side quest based around it afterwards too. But it's decent. It's nothing to. It's not jaw dropping, but it's whimsical. I think it's like an adorable story.
Well, with the Bowser thing, I actually kind of like what they did with Bowser because a lot of times in these RPGs, Bowser's kind of like a goofball. He's kind of a joke a lot of these times in Mario RPGs, and their depiction of him in this game is like he's a lot more intimidating, and he definitely does not want to work with Mario and Luigi. Why would you when these two assholes have been cock blocking you for like 50 years now? And so he actively hates them. And while you technically team up with him in the story, it's by happenstance basically. And he's intimidating. Like when you first see him, he is like having an active war with the other bad guys.
That scene is really fighting. Cool.
Yeah, he like Bowser is like in his flying airship with all of his minions attacking this other flying like castle in this like giant aerial battle. I'm like, damn, this is cool.
Yeah,
and you're kind of hoping it's like, oh, I hope they team up later. But they do that whole thing where, like, I mean, they kind of do this to where, like, you go to Bowser's castle for something. I forget what the reasoning was. And I think, you go to his island because he set up shop on a place you needed this fruit to help cure that gloom thing.
Yeah, Way Away Island or whatever.
And Mario and Luigi, they're good guys. They just kind of walk in like, hey, can we have some fruit? And Bowser's like, why the fuck are you in my house? And then he starts beating the shit out of you. And you beat the crap out of him, and then later in the story, the other bad guys, since Bowser already pissed them off, they kidnap Bowser Jr., which gives Bowser, a huge, the one thing I do like is that they kind of like double down on Bowser being like a cool dad. He's like a good dad. I like that. But he starts, so when Mario and Luigi are like trying to, in the pseudo finale, when they're about to fight the second to final boss, technically, they kind of get cornered by everything, by a bunch of like the army of the bad guy, and then Bowser swoops in and like saves them by blowing them all away, which is kind of cool. And he's still there being like, I'm not here to help you, I'm just here to get my son. By the way, kick his ass like you kicked mine. So I really, the unfortunate part about Bowser is that, as you said, you were saying about the pacing. Yes, this game is very slow to start. It really drip feeds you abilities. Like you're only jumping for the first I don't know, couple hours of gameplay. You have very limited options of what your attacks are. And the mid game is kind of where it has a good pacing. You start getting abilities at a semi-regular interval, and getting new islands attached is fairly good. But then when Bowser shows up, that's when they decide, for whatever reason, they needed to pad the game's length, and that's kind of when the game starts getting slower, and I feel like this game could have been a solid, 6 to 7 hours shorter than it is. That's probably about as much content as I say you could cut out of the game of the required content. But
what is it you guys found is like, if you only go for the main story, it's like a 30 to 35 hour game?
Something like that.
Yeah, because what I do like about most of the side quests in this game, most of the side quests don't take you longer than like 5 to 10 minutes. Very rarely they take you longer than that. So doing the side quests actually felt pretty good, which is the reason why I decided to do most of them.
Yeah.
Aside from like the really gimmicky fights that I don't care for, that the game mechanics I feel are not built around appropriately in order to be fun. But I guess that leads us into the next big thing we should talk about. That'll probably take up most of what we're going to talk about today is the gameplay itself. So now that we understand what we're here and what we're doing, you already had a little bit of combat prior to like having the story set up for you, but as all the other Mario Luigi games are, this is a turn-based RPG, kind of like action combat Paper Mario style, where when you do attacks, you have to put in appropriate button combos in order for you to get the most out of your attacks. And then when you get attacked, you have to press buttons at the right time in order to negate or reduce your damage or even counterattack entirely to turn things into your favor by jumping or using your hammers at the right time. But you have a couple things you can do in combat with Mario and Luigi. Obviously, you can jump on people. You can hit them with your hammers. You can use a bunch of different items, and there's same items from the other games come back. So you have mushrooms for health, syrup for your like your BP, which is like mana essentially, but your bro points that power your special moves, and your revive mushrooms and stuff like that, and then your peanuts, which are basically just like double mushrooms. And then you have your bros attack, which are the main point of the game. And once you get enough of them, that's kind of like your main method of attack, which is these combo moves that Mario and Luigi do in exchange for BP points that usually do like a crap more ton damage than your regular moves do. And they're really fun to do. You have to do a mini game every time, but they're pretty quick and easy. And once you get the hang of them, they're really fun to do. And then occasionally, especially in boss fights, which I feel like is where the combat of this game shines, you'll get these Luigi logic moments, and as I said before, they kind of expand on Luigi's character. So Luigi's kind of set up to be like a kind of a thinker kind of guy. So randomly in the game, like both in the overworld and in combat, Luigi will have like his Jimmy Neutron brain blast idea of to turn something in your favor, and that'll usually give you like an opening for a boss fight to do like a lot of damage. But you have to do a mini game essentially, which I think the mini games are pretty difficult, so it is rewarding to do them properly and get that damage as a reward. But that is the long and short of combat, except for the battle plugs, which is the kind of the unique gimmick of this game, because everything I just said, aside from the Luigi logic, is present in all the other Mario and Luigi games. So the battle plugs are a fun system that basically you get these items that you can activate at any time in combat without having to use up a turn, which is really nice. That gives you a bunch of different kind of like passive skills that augment all your usual skills. So like you're jumping, you can do more jumping, you can do easier counter attacks, you can drop spike balls on guys or just power up your moves in general, like your bros attack do like so much more damage, or you auto use items so you don't have to use a turn to use an item. All sorts of different crazy passive abilities. And I love passive abilities in RPGs because passive abilities are like the most OP ones in my opinion once you get like a good combination of them. So that's the main gimmick of this game. And you get a bunch of them throughout the entire story. And that's what the sprite bulbs that Edwin was talking about, this collectible you get in the overworld, is used for, to craft more of those battle plugs. So you use that for your regular combat. You use that for your boss fights and stuff. But as far as how that all applies to combat goes, I think combat's really, really fun in this game. I really, truly do. But where this game kind of starts becoming an issue is that later on in the game, especially, I saw this especially when you start, again, unfortunately, these problems start happening when Bowser shows up. But in Bowser's Castle, when you start fighting Bowser's minions, you fight the Magic Koopas, which are, the comic enemies, the little ones in the broom. And their attacks take so damn long to do that it just starts getting really aggravating to having to fight them. Not because they're hard, but because sitting through the animations to dodge or counter their attacks takes way longer than it should. And I remember when people were pissed off about how long it took for the HP to drain in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and Platinum when they first came out. I mean, it's still a problem in those games where like you do damage, like all the animations are really slow, the HP drains really slowly. It's just an inconvenience and no one likes that. Because they're cool attacks because they're complex and they're fun, but they just take so much damn time to get over with. And when you're fighting like 5 or 6 enemies at once and they all get to do that shit, it's really aggravating and builds up over time. I think where this game's combat shines is in the boss fights. Because combat is punishing. You really have to be paying attention to what's happening in order to dodge attacks because it can be really fast. All the enemies have tells, so you should, once you learn them, you know who is being attacked and when. But sometimes it's so damn fast, I can't tell what's happening, and sometimes you can just cheese it with a battle plug. But I was looking forward more to the boss fights than the regular fights because after I saw an enemy like 2 or 3 times, I was kind of getting sick and tired of having to counter them, especially the longer and longer their animations took to get through. But overall, I really like the combat. The only other thing is that the battle music, while fine, I think it's decent music. Kind of like how Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green is. It kind of gets tiring after the 520th time listening to it. I really wish each island had a different battle theme, which would have been really nice. But it's just the same theme no matter what you're fighting, which is kind of sucks. And even though it's, like I said, decent theme, but I don't want to listen to it 500,000 times. Which, being an RPG, you're going to be listening to it a lot. And I have more to say on certain other things, but I'll let everyone else take the floor. So, Jordan, when you watched the combat, what did you think of it?
I thought it was actually nice. It kind of, like I said, it definitely was reminding me of Paper Mario. Being able to see that you could do the dodges or being able to do extra damage by just timing it just right so you could extra stomp on their head, or being able to use Mario and Luigi in a way that where they basically had unique attacks showing themselves hitting each other's hammers to create, velocity and then hitting their opponent. I thought that was kind of cool. I was able to see that they were doing something different than just their average running and jumping and hitting people, which is what I was kind of used to in the Paper Mario series. So to see that was nice. I did not, again, get able to see everything that was going on, so I don't know in specifics as if how much more detail they were adding for each of those characters and how they were able to, I guess, do specials and stuff. I think I did see it when Corey was over, but I just can't recall it. I do know that when he was out in I forgot what level he was, like they could turn to like a little UFO and stuff, turn to a ball. It was kind of cool, like how they could try to be really zany with it and be able to make them do these crazy things that obviously Mario itself already doesn't make sense. You got a plumber who's talking to mushrooms, you got a princess, you got a king of these turtle looking dragons and stuff, so it's already outlandish as it is. So it's really cool that they can go through and make things unique as they possibly can and try to create a whole other different story with more new characters. So I think it's kind of cool.
All right, Edwin, what's your opinion on the gameplay and the combat?
So, I mean, it was like this is a new format that we're doing this breakdown on. So I know that I went on a rant earlier, but we said that it would be somewhat spoiler free. So I was trying not to mention like very specific, but I'm still trying to understand like what we were doing. So I guess just be vague, but not mention anything, because you talked about the battle plugs, so I was trying not to mention like what they were. I was just explaining how they were, how they worked. So I'll try to do a little better this time and from now on. So for the combat, I like the animation during combat. The problem is that it takes a really long while to like get the full capacity of everything that you can do in a fight. Like 5 or maybe around 5 islands later, which is many hours later, you finally get to have all your abilities that you can do in combat, as well as like your bro powers, your hammer attacks, the battle plugs, and things like that. So it's just very handholdy all the way up to that point. So it's kind of annoying because it's maybe a few hours of just jumping attacks, no hammers, no nothing. So it was I just started the game and I was already like a turn off and entertainment for me. So I was just kind of bored in the beginning. The only thing that was keeping my attention was just like how nice the game looked. But eventually going through the story, I finally got the hammer attacks. That's probably like my favorite like animation for both those characters, because the very unique thing about this game is that the variation in both animation and the abilities that Mario and Luigi can do. The game, like prefaces the fact that Luigi is I don't know why they do this, but it's like he's like depicted as a god in this world, which is very weird.
What?
Because of all his ability, like his ability to just, I guess, be himself. And then Mario is just kind of in the background. It's just like, yeah, you're always the hero, but we're gonna praise the fuck out of Luigi. I just find that part weird. But like mid game, it's like a lot of the same kind of fights. It's like and the islands like they have like obviously the same type of enemies. So it's like as you said, Udon, it's like the fights are very samey. So but it's like it also depends on like how you want to fight. For me, I just use like the same abilities for both Mario and Luigi's turns, which is mainly just spamming their bro powers. But like the variation between both those characters is they both get their own different bro powers, but it also like the timing for each action command is different for both, and also how many enemies and how it affects the battlefield is also different. So it just makes it more interesting to get a new ability to use. But the thing that was a bigger disappointment when it came to that is you have different abilities in battle and in the overworld to get you through obstacles, like over hills or gaps or things like that. Like you said, the ball and the UFO. Like I was kind of hoping that while you can use those in the overworld to kind of mess with the environment and like roll into enemies, you can't use those abilities in an actual fight, even though it seems like you could have, or it would be very unique to use it in a fight. So
Well,
like,
the funny thing is that that's how it used to work especially in Superstar Saga. When you got a new ability, and they're more basic, but like when you got a new ability in Superstar Saga, like when you got the hammers or you got the like lightning and fire hand and stuff like that, like not they applied an overworld use, like some kind of traversal mechanism, but also became like a new move in battle. But in this game, those are like two separate things.
Yeah, I mean it was. Yeah, I mean I understand that like the UFO is pretty much like the hammer spin to like get over gaps, in other games. Granted, I've only seen like videos for that, and I've only played Bowser's Inside Story like maybe 10 years ago. So it's a very old memory for me. So it's like I can hardly remember that, but um like the combat is like obviously the like as you said the boss fights are the more interesting parts. It's when you go back for a side quest to fight him again, it's definitely a skill check because not only are they stronger, they're definitely a lot more vicious. But it's like the one mechanic that doesn't make a whole lot of sense is just kind of like the speed mechanic, which is the part that I did have problems with a boss, is because I couldn't tell like is he just that much faster than me, or is my speed just too slow? It was kind of like a guessing game of numbers. So it's kind of like I either just like do my best to pass these skill checks, or should I just bump up this one thing that might be my main issue? But I mean, I don't know what the problem would be. There is a unique thing that I didn't have to Google because I didn't understand how it worked exactly. Like as you said, there are the mushrooms, the maple syrup, the nuts, and then there is two new things: the candy, which gives you HP and BP by a percentage of your maximum, and then there's something called a boo biscuit. Is that what it's called?
Boo biscuit, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's a 2-for-1 item, so it gives it to both Mario and Luigi. And if you want to practice specifically the timing for counters and any other skill check for tapping the action command, you pretty much eat those, and you can't deal damage to any enemy on the field, including bosses, but they can't do damage to you either. So it's just kind of like a practice thing without any of the consequences. So it's funny that it's meant to be for practice, but the only time that I've actually used it is just to like cheese through super moves, which is kind of a weird thing to let you get away with.
I'm glad someone used it because I never even used those items because I was just like, why would I want that? Fuck this. I never even used the boo biscuit because I didn't really it's like, to me, I read it and it just read to me like, oh, this is for people who, I don't know, suck at the game and need an item to where they just like cheese their way through a fight, I guess. I don't know. I just never used it.
Well, the thing is, my first impression of it was that it was like it does give you invincibility, but I missed the part where it doesn't let you do any damage. But the way that people have been using it is not to practice for the action command, but to skip turns to charge the battle plugs when you have like the faster recharge equipment, and then you just use the boo biscuit, and then so every turn, 3 turns passes to recharge for your battle plugs per turn. So it's like a 3 turn for 1 turn type of like faster recharge. So people just kind of use it for that. I mean, it's pretty funny.
Oh, and going back to the battle plugs, I wanted to comment on something you said when you're going on that other rant earlier. But I don't really care. I mean, I don't really mind that the battle plugs recharge in combat. Quite frankly, half the time I would just like forget to change out my battle plugs when they ran out. Like I never found myself wanting to change, to always wanting like a specific battle plug, I guess. Like if it was on cooldown, there were so many other useful battle plugs that it just, I liked it because it forced me to change my combat style every time it was on cooldown or something. And the stuff that I knew was like really good, that was like power up your bros moves or whatever, I would just save those for boss fights. But I don't know. I never really found an issue that the recharge on some of them were really, really long. Because anytime I'm like, oh, it's out, I'll just plug in something else here for now. You know, it's like even if it's something I don't even plan on using, it's just like, oh, auto mushroom or whatever, because I don't have the spike ball or something like that. I don't know. I never really had an issue in terms of wanting those plugs to recharge, and like I always found that mine were up when I needed them, I guess. I don't know. I never really saw the issue. I like it when a game forces you out of your comfort zone and like forces you to do things differently occasionally instead of just being reliant on one thing or another. Even though that the game does kind of fall into that trap inadvertently, because as you said, at a certain point in the game, about the mid to late game, combat really isn't about using any jumps or hammers or anything. It's just about spamming the best bro moves, which some of the bro moves are just objectively better than others. Because something like the bomb derby move is like one of the best ones you can have, and then sometimes the bro moves can be so unnecessarily complicated or something that you might as well just do the lesser one because it's easier to do and more reliant. Which again, it actually reminds me that I don't like how this game does AoE attacks because it's not real. It's not an even AoE attack. Like 90% of the AoE attacks that this game has does not spread the damage evenly to all the opponents. And I don't need it to be specifically even. What I mean is that there's this move called the bomb derby, which by itself is a really good move. And even though it says it attacks, like it's an AoE move, but arguably it's actually better to use it on a single target, because how it works is that Luigi will throw a bunch of bombs at Mario, who baseballs the bombs with his hammer and attacks the enemy. But he attacks random enemies on the enemy team, and it only does damage to that one enemy with that one bomb. And I think you get like 7 or 8 of those bombs. And only the last bomb actually hits all enemies. So not all the enemies are being hit all at once, which can throw things off, which a challenge fight that I gave up on was a big deal with that, was having to kill a bunch of enemies at once, all at the same time. And only moves that like Luigi's Zappinator actually hit all the enemies all at once. But the thing is, that move doesn't do as much damage as the other moves do. And again, some of these AoE moves are actually arguably better to do to a single target, which is what I was using them for later in the game, than actually using it for an AoE. Because there's this really, really aggravating fight that you have to do. That's what you are required to do twice. Both of them against Goombas, I think. But there's this, when you first fight a bunch of Goombas, the game basically out front tells you, like, hey, you have to beat all of the Goombas all at once, because if you don't, the more will just respawn. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But what's fucked up about it is that very rarely will you be able to clear an entire board of enemies with one bro move with all of them being at full. So it's like, oh, if I hit him with an AoE of Mario's, then hit him with an AoE of Luigi's, they'll die, right? No, the fucking game wants you to do it all at once with one person's moves. Because what happens if you use a move and you kill even one Goomba, that Goomba will call for another Goomba, and then it'll be Luigi's turn. They won't take a turn, they just interrupt the flow of combat to call more Goombas. And it just, not only that, but the damage numbers on the AoE attacks are so lopsided that you want it to be even so they all die at the same time, but if you fuck it up once, and then now there's like a bunch of, like, half the Goombas have low HP, then half of them are full HP because of how the randomness of the damage, and not to mention the damage numbers themselves are kind of ridiculous sometimes. But I really, really, really fucking hated those fights and just kept like bashing my head against the wall. Those were the fights I hated the most, was against those damn Goombas. Just because of how the stupid AoE moves work. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's like I was like I didn't deal with all that too, but I was like I also passed those because of the battle plugs. But when it comes to like the battle plugs, there's like your, like I said, the passive stuff, but like it's things like that in between like boss fights and islands and dialogue and all that. So it's like there's moments where it's like a mini boss, then a boss, and then fights like that. And then the game does have auto saving, but it's kind of weird because kind of like only in like very specific parts. Like it could be like an hour or maybe 10 minutes ago. So it's like if you didn't save beforehand, you're kind of at a risk of doing a lot of things over. But like the battle plugs, you'll need them for like specific fights like that, and then it immediately goes to a boss fight. But like it is like if you use too much or you need some specifically because of the boss, that the way it is, like there's some boss fights where like, oh, it's like simplistic, but then like there's a threshold where halfway it changes up a ton, and then you have to switch out all your battle plugs just because of this one change. But you're not fully prepared. But it's like the game pushes you that way. And so it's like you can't really escape, because once you get to an island, you cannot leave until you finish it. So it's kind of like a lot of nitpicking between all this stuff. I was like, and both design choices and for us to like play through the game. So it's kind of like a lot of infuriating just issues and like one thing or another that kind of ruins the experience when they all like collide together, just become one big problem for maybe an hour or two. So I get that they're challenges, and it's like a renewable resource, but it's I don't know. It's just like I just had so much money. I was like I would pay for like a recharge station for these things constantly, because like the like buying equipment is just like it. You can find a thing immediately after an island, but an island is like maybe 30 minutes long that it could take you. But it's like there's always something to buy, so it's like it's not really worth it to like buy something every time you visit an island. So I was like, I'd rather put my money into something else. It's like because the game just floods you with like other items like mushrooms and 1-ups and stuff. So it's just like a lot of small issues and weird design choices in the game. So I was like, that's my main issue with like the battle plugs and like some other issues of the game. So it's like I'm at 61 hours for a reason. I'm struggle busting through some of this stuff.
Yeah. All right, Corey, I'm sure you're chomping at the bit. What do you think about the gameplay of the game?
I think it has a pretty solid grasp on like a fun factor because every single island is really kind of fun to explore, and they're all their own unique little like puzzle box in a sense. Because like it is a Mario game, so they kind of like their strongest thing that they've ever had was platforming, and so they really kind of use platforming to their advantage for a lot of things here with the UFO and like melting ice and freezing things and timing jumps and carrying plugs, and so it's like it's never like the dungeon designs are actually pretty good. They're compartmentalized experiences, but you're constantly solving something so that like instead of it just being an expansive empty dungeon, you're like busy the whole time until you get to like the end of it. And I kind of like that aspect of it. And that's just like the overworld stuff. Balance things aside, I think the combat, though slow in the beginning, as you get abilities, it feels really good. The impact of the hammers, the jumping and stuff, it's really nice. Unless you have low battery on your controller and you start getting some timing off, because if you can't get any of the timing in combat, then you're kind of SOL. And there's only one plug that I've seen that does auto things, but I use that one. I pair it with anything that boosts Brothership abilities or the bro abilities. I do the auto thing for the excellence to do some other stuff, and then I just drop like one of those moves because like you said earlier with the lightning move that Luigi does, that I use all the time because it's like, I'm not going to mess up this stupid jump in the firing barrels move because unless that's an auto thing, because it's too much risk for the reward on that one. Because if you get one button mess up, you're like, damn it, okay, now I got to wait for like 19 enemies to go take their turn. And each combat experience is like isolated too because of the pairing of enemies that you're facing, whether it might be Kamek and he's doing his stupid, like, I'm going to make these random blocks, you got to jump over enemies, and then I fly by and you can jump on him, and that move that he does is like 30 seconds long. Yeah. But if you're fighting two of them, and then you have the Koopas that'll kick a shell at you, and then if you jump on it, then you catch it, you can kick the shells back at them and time it back and forth, but if you screw up, then you hurt yourself. There's a lot of like dynamic to the combat system, but there is a lot of crazy play with numbers on some stuff where it's just like, holy crap, that guy did half my life and damage, and it's like he might just be too fast, or and those could be skill issue things, of course, but it's like, oh, Mario tripped, and so it's like he's about to eat so much damage from this. Or like if you take on a status ailment, because the only two status ailments that prevent you from blocking is him tripping or you're dizzy. And anything else is like, I think you can get iced. I haven't really noticed my character's freezing, but I've froze other people. But the poison damage is basically just being burned, so you take damage over time from being on fire. But the only gripes that I've had were some of the instances where it's like, oh, I have to fight this mob. And like, yeah, to kill the Goombas and then kill the Koopas, and you have to do all of them at once. And it's like, I have to pair all the right plugs up so that I can drop the balls while I do the kaboom and it makes sure it hits everybody. And that way, like, I do maximum damage over an area, and it's otherwise you're going to be doing it for a while. And if you don't do it correctly and your plugs charges go away, now you have to wait like 15 turns for them to come back while the other things are just refilling. The Bowser fight in particular, I was having a problem with because he had like 9 minions with him, like 7 to 9 minions, and they all get a turn, and then he goes 3 times, and I was like, when do I get to do something? Mm-hmm. So, it's like, I don't even know what the speed stat is. And mostly, any time I've ever been in combat, I don't go first. Like, I haven't gone first for most of the fights I've been in that game. There's probably a handful of times where I actually go first. And the other thing about the combat being kind of strange sometimes is that they reward you for interacting with enemies on the open world field, or I guess like outside of combat when you're just in the platforming dungeon area. You can jump on their head or hit them with your hammer or whatever the ability you have. But most of the time that doesn't really work, that I've found. I've jumped on people's heads, but the enemy's reaction to you jumping at them, if they throw something or whatever, that will immediately hit you before you hit them. The hammer's range is like literally like one spot in front of you, so you risk touching the enemy in general from them like pathfinding on the map. They might just turn and their shoulder touches you before you even get the hammer down. The fireball move doesn't hit flying enemies, but it hits them on the field, but it won't hit them when it enters the arena. And so the only real like good ability to use is your sonic roll thing when you just jet at an enemy to do damage at them, because most of the time it's almost impossible, it feels, to interact with an enemy in the field before combat, and that kind of sucks. But as far as boss fights go, the boss fights are pretty interesting because of that, like Luigi's "I got an idea" thing. Like it makes the boss fights so different because they interact with like the level around you that you're fighting in, and it's not just about like, oh, here's a guy that has 10,000 health or whatever. Like he might have 10,000 health, but when you get to the button timing thing of Luigi's idea, then you start dumping like 300% damage or whatever because you've done this event correctly, and it kind of makes those interesting. And there's not a lot of bosses in the game that I've noticed. I mean, there's like 20 levels and stuff, but like big bosses that you're interacting with them like that, those are kind of far and few between. Because the first one you fight is like a giant rock guy, and then after that it takes a while.
I forgot about that guy.
I think the combat is pretty solid for an RPG. I do think there's some balancing things that are weird. The plug stuff, I kind of often forget to put anything on when they all die, and I'm like, oh yeah. But now that I've started interacting with it more, just for like damage buffs and all this other stuff, I'm just kind of like, man, it kind of sucks that I just used this through the whole dungeon, and now I'm at the boss and I have to wait for them to charge. Like, even if there was no charge zones to pay or whatever, that's fine. But that item, that block you hit that refills everything, it should reset all of your charges so you go into that fight like at max strength, because it's already giving you all of your mana and health back, so why not charge all your plugs? That could be the only way that you do it. That's fine. But it's the plug thing is probably it has this the problem I have with it kind of stems from like all the other like Final Fantasy games and stuff that I played in the past. Is like, I don't want to use my magic spells because I want to make sure I have all my mana for when I get to the end of the dungeon and just unload on the boss. Because if I use all my mana, magic recovering items are usually more expensive in RPGs, so it's like I don't have any of those, so I need to wait until I can either rest at an inn. So I'm just going to protect my mages until I get to the end. And so with the plugs, where it's like, these are really good damage plugs and they only got like 3 or 4 turns, I'm just going to wait to use them. But then you end up in a battle with like 6 enemies in one mob that you don't know that how many enemies you're going to fight because it's only one on a field. And then you're like, oh god, I'm going to be fighting these guys for the next 25 minutes just because of the movesets they have and then the damage that they're going to do. So there is some balancing needed, but overall, I think the game play is really good.
Yeah, I mean, because you were also playing like kind of gimped because you were skipping some side quests in an attempt to trying to.
Yeah, I'm kind of base low level, like whatever the tier is that requires me to be on, I'm usually like one level under that or exactly that by the time I get to the boss.
Yeah. And so your fights were a bit hard because you were ranting and raving about the Bowser fight. I'm sure it was hard, but I remember the same fight and I was like, well, that was easy for me. Which it kind of leads in because you were also talking about the overworld stuff, which I also wanted to bitch about, which was going to be the next section of this. I'm combining 2 different things. They'll probably be the majority of the rest of this episode. Because the gameplay is the large portion of this game. But so the next part we have is that I did want to talk about overworld stuff, both just walking around the worlds, the bro abilities that you use to traverse the worlds, and like the first strike things. Not only that, but the ship itself, because we have this whole mechanic where we have to sail around this sea on this map that's like constantly going in the background that's how we traverse the world, that I wanted to get everyone's opinion on. And aside from the overworld stuff, both with the ship and with the world itself, I wanted to talk about just the RPG elements of the game, both in terms of like gear and leveling up and the perks and stuff, and how we feel about that. Maybe we should have touched on that before combat, but oh well, we're here now. So the couple things I wanted to say about it is that the big thing is that how you traverse the world is all the islands are separated by pipes. There's no like seamless world or anything like that. Um, but to traverse this sea, you have this map where you tell the Brothership where to go on these like ship currents, water currents, ocean currents, and you travel along them to find all those separated floating islands that are around both the main islands, and you'll find these smaller islands which are basically just like little side islands that are just filled with enemies and items just to go get stuff they're not required, and these reefs which are just like little bonus things to find. But that's how you traverse the world, and especially in the first part of the game before you get the ability to speed up the ship, it's kind of a pain in the ass because the game does tell you that, because you have this map open at all times up in the upper left hand corner of your screen, so you know where the ship is. And before you get the ability to speed it up, the game tells you like, hey, now that you've told the ship where to go, you can go back to the other islands and go do stuff, because after you connect an island to the main island, it opens up other pathways on that past island that you can go do and go get items and stuff. So it encourages you to backtrack and go get stuff, which is kind of annoying because it goes slow enough to where you don't want to sit there and wait for it, but fast enough by the time you're in the middle of doing something on the other island, you're like, oh shit, I got to get back to the island to go find the next island. I'm in the middle of something. So it's a little awkward. I don't know if it was strictly necessary and we couldn't just have a map where it was just like, go here, go here, go here, and you just have like a map of the world to see instead of having it be this like constant travel mechanic in the background that I found really awkward, especially when very late game you essentially just yeet all that out the window when your ship can either fly or go underwater and you can just go anywhere you want at any time. It's a little weird like that. But I just found that strange. But that was my only grievance with that. Otherwise, it's fine. It's just a little like inconvenience, I guess. But as far as the overworld combat, Corey, you already said a little bit about it. Getting first strikes on people in this fucking game made me want to fucking put a gun in my mouth, because it is like the most aggravating. I cannot tell you how many fucking times I went up to an enemy to hit him with my hammer, and I heard my hammer go kathunk, and I even saw the hammer Mario go through the whole animation, but because that enemy hit me a frame sooner, I don't get the thing. Even though I saw the whole animation, it just clipped through the enemy and then fucking combat starts. And God, don't even get me started on trying to jump on a motherfucker, because the perspective on jumping is so fucking jank. I can never hit him on the head. It was the most aggravating. I just gave up on getting first strikes entirely and just ran into things because it was just too much effort. Because usually most of the time in my efforts to get the first strike, they'd hit me in the back or some bullshit, and now I'm starting off on the back foot, you know? I think the overworld's a little jank in that aspect. It just seemed inconsistent, which it's the biggest inconsistency with this game, because otherwise the game runs really well. I think the only time I saw performance issues was at near the end of the game, where there's a bunch more bullshit on the overworld map, and it actually did cause the game to lag at a certain points, like the frame rate dips. But other than that, the game ran pretty well. But that was a constant issue of trying to get a fucking first strike on someone in the overworld. It was just maddening. I hated it. Not to mention that the enemies that throw shit at you in the overworld are like fucking tactical marine snipers, because god damn it, their accuracy is ridiculous. But that was really aggravating. And honestly, I didn't even know I could run into them with the Sonic the Hedgehog move. If I had known that, I probably would have used that, but I didn't even know you could use that as like a combat opener. But as far as traversal goes, you have like 4 different bros moves. The one where you turn into like a little UFO to go over gaps. You turn into a little Sonic ball to zip up slopes and stuff. And what was the other ones? You had the fire and ice move, where Mario and Luigi get their fire and ice flowers, which for whatever reason don't play into combat moves until way later in the game, which was strange. But you have those to get rid of ice and fire obstacles, and then you had one more move that's escaping me right now. Someone help me. You had the fourth move.
The fourth overworld bro move.
You
Yeah.
roll around and charge move your UFO, and then you can vacuum things, and then you can shoot fireballs, and then charge a fireball and shoot a giant one.
Yeah,
There was
because it's up, down, left, right on the
The
D
up
pad.
one is just to regular walk.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what my brain's fucking up on. Thank you. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I was worried it's like 4. I was like, I think there's just 3.
Yeah, no, you're right. My brain just did a backflip because I was like, there was 4 things you could do, but yeah, that's just the normal mode. But yeah, then all those moves have like an additional function that you unlock later. One of the coolest ones is the fucking like fire and ice Kamehameha blast, which is really visually cool looking. But yeah, so and traversing the overworld is like it's piss easy. It's fine. Some like doing the UFO thing is a bit awkward sometimes because of just the wind up and wind down. Like traversing the worlds, I don't think is strictly fun. I think the only time I find it fun is when I'm using the little ball and you get to zip around the place. That's fun. But like the UFO thing, and the fire and ice ball, like whatever. Like getting to blow shit up with the big blast, that's fun. But the UFO I never found was that fun. I just found it just slowing me down. As far as level design, really basic, just very basic. You have a couple platforming challenges here and there, but nothing like super demanding. There only one I remember is that there was a one in the fireplace where there was like an Indiana Jones style, like a giant rock rolling after you, and you have to pass this bomb back and forth between Mario and Luigi over like this fire and shit to get to the end. That was kind of fun because you were on like a timer and it was all skill based. But that was some fun overworld maneuvering. And they have like the old Pokemon ice slide puzzles and shit like that in here too. None of the puzzles I think were that complicated. They even have a few logic puzzles on one of my favorite islands called the Lot of Coins Island, where there was like actual puzzles with like math and clues and stuff. And I was like, this is kind of fun. I like this. That's all just overworld clue finding and things. That was really fun. As far as the overworlds themselves, while the worlds are fun, I just think they're stock standard. It's just like we have Forest World and Other Forest World and Desert World and Ice World and Fire World and like I guess Capitalism World. Like I found the different the different variations being very fun. It was just kind of like I've seen all of this before. There's no ideas that kind of like blew me out of the park, I guess. They do have the strange ones, like there's like a theme park island, and then there was like a resort island and stuff. But both of those are really aggravating, especially the maze island. I hated. But when it came to the RPG elements for me, I thought they were pretty fun. Even though you only get the 2 characters, Mario and Luigi, like in every other RPG, you get experience points for beating enemies, and leveling up, you get stat increases. As the game points out to you on your first level up, Mario is more aligned to doing more damage and is speedier than Luigi, but Luigi has more health and defense and actually has a larger stash stat, which stash in this game is basically just your critical hit rate. But the thing is that you can kind of control and so those aspects of those characters will increase faster than everything else when they level up, but you have a good amount of control over like what they can do, because you get these items called beans in the world, which I think is a throwback to Superstar Saga, where it was like bean land, or things like beans were a big thing in the first Mario and Luigi game. But they are permanent stat increases and you can apply them to whoever you want. But me, when I played, I just doubled down on both brothers their stronger aspects. So Mario basically became like an ultra glass cannon for me. Like even in the last boss fight, all it came down to is Mario doing the best bro move in the game and Luigi just feeding him syrup and mushrooms, and he was just tanking. So I made Luigi super tanky and didn't do a lot of damage, but he got like a crit every other hit. And then Mario did a fuck ton of damage, especially when he crit. And I also increased Mario's speed really high, which you said you never went first, but later in the game for me, I was always going first. Both Mario and Luigi were going first for me, like to the point where like I always wanted to go first because I could usually like one shot everything on the field with whatever Mario move I did. And I was just spamming the bomb derby move all the time. So I mean, it's confusing how speed works, but I just started increasing it and I immediately saw a return on being like the first every time I was in combat. It's not a super deep system, but there are certain items, like when I say I turn Mario into glass cannon, you can equip boots, hammer, clothes, and then one pair of gloves and one accessory to the brother. And the first three basically are just straight increases to your jump power, your hammer power, and your defense. And then the fun starts with the gloves and the badges or the accessories because they can give you fun bonuses. Like you do like 30% bros damage, but if it's not an excellent, you take damage and stuff like that. Like I always took the risky ones with really big returns on them, and that's how Mario started doing like an ass ton of damage. He would take a ton of damage every turn, but I'd be dishing it out just as fast, which I thought was really really fun. And even more fun is that on certain level intervals, you get to pick a perk for both brothers, and they can both pick from the same pool of perks. But these perks are like really, really good, like just straight 20% increase to jump damage, or every level up you get even more of a certain stat, or you just take a flat 20% less damage, or bros attacks just do 20% more. Like I love percentages, I love passive abilities in this game, and I love making shit broken as fuck. And I thought that was really fun. It does cap out eventually. I leveled them up so far to where I wasn't going to get any perks anymore, which was kind of disappointing. There is a cap to it, and you are stuck with your choices. But I like being stuck with your choices because you're just you're forced to face the consequences of your actions. But yeah, that's all I have to say about those aspects. So, Jordan, do you have anything to say about any of that?
Not really. I mean, I have not played much of this game. Like I said, I enjoyed the battling of it. It was kind of nice. It reminded me of Paper Mario once again. Yeah, it was. I think that they did put a lot of time and effort into making this game, and I do believe that it's probably going to be a top notch game for the year.
Alrighty, then that's fine. Go ahead, Edwin. What do you have to say about both like the overworld traversal and the RPG elements of the game?
Well, I like that they gave you the golden pipe, which lets you just teleport back and forth between islands a lot earlier. The fact that they have two different fast travel methods at two different points of the game for your actual ship that are very far apart. The faster traveling through the currents and the fast travel across the entire ocean. Like those could have been useful earlier rather than the very end of the game when you already have all the islands that you need following you, and the smaller islands that you can't bring with you are like one-time use, except for like a certain few to get to Bowser's area. So it just kind of seems like a little redundant to have the faster one at the very end. It just doesn't make any sense.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't. No, I agree with you. We should have gotten that upgrade way sooner, like halfway through the game or something.
Yeah. I mean the islands are fine. I do find it weird that it's like you're this tiny little ship-shaped island, which is literally what's called ship-shaped island, just pulling an entire continent like behind you.
It's mushroom. It's Concordia magic or whatever the fuck. Don't question it.
It's just funny. Yeah. It's like the smallest island is the one pulling all the larger islands. Like the islands are okay. They really do take the favorite that you go to constantly, especially like the Fire Ice Island. You go back there so many times. The traversal was okay. I did have a little bit of infuriation that I was missing something, but I didn't, because you do get like the UFO, the ball, earlier, but you don't get like the additional thing that they can do later. So you don't know if like you may have missed something, or if it's story based, or if you're just not pressing the right button. So it's like I was missing some stuff that I didn't know that I couldn't get. Like there are ramps to go up a cliff, but like I could turn into a ball. I just didn't know how to dash. So, but it's like later find out, it's like, oh, you have ability. Yeah. So it's just like it's just a little bit annoying. I did find out that like you could just suck up coins from the vents. I was like, I almost missed that part. It's just like it was a Luigi brain blast for me to attempt that, because it didn't tell me to do that.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I actually forgot. So I mentioned earlier about the Luigi brain blast thing. So it happens in combat to open up opportunities on bosses, but Luigi will constantly have these brain blasts on the overworld to kind of usually hint at whatever you need to do for some kind of overworld puzzle, if not just outright tell you what to do. But it's kind of funny because the solution to some of these problems are just like, there's a wall blocking between me and this button I have to get to. It's like, what's Luigi's big plan to get to that button? It's like, just cram himself through the door to get over there. And I'm just like, what a brilliant idea, dude. Good job.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed by your intelligence.
Yeah, it's just like that. It was like you had a brain blast just to do that, and it's like everyone's just like, "That's fucking genius!" Just
He's like, "Oh my god, Luigi, you're so smart." I'm like, "What the fuck?"
but
yeah,
there's some other world stuff that was like I found it wasn't like a bad thing because there wasn't really that much consequence, but it started to get really annoying. What I do wish, instead of just like using the L button just to send Luigi out to do things when it's like a green highlight, I wish there was like I could switch control and then control them separately rather than just like having to be a certain distance away from the item you want Luigi to go and get. Because if you send Luigi to go do something and then you head in the other direction with Mario because he's the only character you can actually control, they do stop and then they stop what they're doing and then they immediately run to each other so they're not too far apart. The problem with that is that it doesn't matter what's between them. They're going to reach each other. So if there's a lava gap between you, they're going to jump in that lava to reach each other because they're too far apart. And I just found that really annoying during that boulder part where I got too far away and then the game is just like, Mario and Luigi's too far away. Force them to go together. It was like, they physically can't get near each other because of the lava pit between them. And so they jump in, and then I have to start over the whole level again because they got hurt. You don't lose any health. It's just like they fly up off the screen, and then they go back to like a safe area.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It only happened to me once to basically inconvenience me, but I was doing some platforming segment, but what happened was that I jumped on a platform as Mario, like as the platform was moving away, so I just barely made it. But Luigi's AI didn't jump onto the platform in time, but so that took Mario far away from him. Because of that, they stop, they look towards each other, and so Mario just runs off the fucking platform to go over to Luigi. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I made the jump. Don't fucking. It's not my fault. You suck. But I was kind of, luckily that was really early in the game where the only penalty for me was just having to go and do the jump again. But I was like, man, that could be a fucking issue in the future. So I just had that in the back of my mind, like, don't get them too far away, which was kind of annoying because in the past Mario and Luigi games, Superstar Saga again, you actually switch between the brothers at will in the overworld to traverse. And you can control both of their jumpings with A and B, respectively, a lot like how you do in this game. But I couldn't help but feel the controls in that old Game Boy Advance game was like way tighter, and getting Mario and Luigi to get to the same place when I had control, because Luigi wouldn't jump by himself. I had to do it for him in those old games, but I felt like it was more consistent and better than the AI Luigi was in this game, to where I had to like babysit them. I couldn't take any risks. I had to make sure Luigi was going to get where he was going. So that was kind of annoying, and it's just that was a bit aggravating too. So I'm glad you brought that up. Anything else you want to say on that topic?
There was another thing, but I forgot what it was. Yeah, I was like, I fell off cliffs because of that as well. But like the AI for Luigi the AI and positioning for Luigi is kind of weird. I mean, it's okay because it's just not getting too far away from him, even though there's like some sections where it's like you literally are like placed apart for story purposes. But like you mentioned earlier, like the attacking enemies in the overworld, like that is also like incredibly impossible most of the time, because they're like 3 times faster than you at hitting you, and then like your attacks are like really tight to hit anything. So it's like if you want to like dodge anything, you have to pretty much juke the enemy's aim in order to dodge anything, especially for the goddamn bone sharks. There's like they lead their shots so perfectly if you keep going the same direction. And then like,
yeah, I forgot about the bone sharks.
Yeah, it's like because it's just like almost instantaneous for them to hit you. But it's like they also insta kill you if they I did not believe them. I was like, no, you can't fight them. I was like, we'll see
same,
about that.
Yeah, it's like I did the same thing. I'm like, bullshit, let's fight. And it's like one shot. I'm like, oh, okay, got it. I'm like, you meant that.
It's very funny. It was like even ones like they was like, oh, side quest, fight the bone shark. I was like, I was like, after the first time, I don't want to.
Well, I did that quest, and I thought it was annoying because it was like, oh, I fought the bone shark, but I had to use the plug to reduce damage so I could actually take a hit from them. But that side quest was such bullshit because it was like, I think I was level 30 and they were 35, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna level up a bit and come back to where I'm at least on their level. And I leveled up and came back, and I was like level 30, I was like level 40 or something. I came back for, I was like, all right, I'm 5 levels higher. And they were 40, or they went up to 45. I was like, what the fuck? It scales with me? This is bullshit. And I did eventually do it. I did end up eventually doing it, but god damn it, I fucking hated that shit. It was just the one random enemy in the game that could just one-shot you, and it was just like, well, why can it one-shot you? It's like, oh, because the character said it could. I was like, well, that's stupid. None of the other enemies can one-shot me. It's like, yeah, but it's a bone shark. It's like, yeah, okay. It's like I don't get it. It's that was really, I hated that. I fucking hated those stupid bone sharks. That was just a really annoying part of the game for me.
I completely ignored the levels for the enemies. I just fought whatever was in front of me. The only levels I cared about were Mario and Luigi because I just wanted those rank up bonuses.
Oh yeah, like I agree. I did the same thing, but when it came to the bone sharks, because they one shot you, I was like, oh, maybe I can out level them finally. And that's why they were one shotting me. Because when I was here the first time, I was so low level, but then I go level up, and they just scale with you. I'm like, that's stupid.
It's like I didn't even notice that. I was like, oh, they one shot me. I'm not gonna fight them. And it's like the only reason I even passed it was because it was like I failed so many times that I eventually got good at the dodging and countering. So,
Yeah.
but like so it's like that attack and like the juking for the enemies is like the main issue that I had with that problem is because the best place that I could grind for levels at the time was Bowser's area. Like the second time you had to go there. There's this one spot where there's just a Magic Koopa where but the thing about the Magic Koopas is like they're really annoying to fight, but they do give decent experience. But also they're the enemy that flies so high up that you can't hit them with anything unless you're already a step above them, like on the stairs or on the cliffside. But they can hit, but their attack is ranged, so they can always hit you no matter where you are. So it's just very bullshit things like that. And then speaking of the countering and stuff and the action command, I've noticed since the very beginning of the game, the Switch can play the game very fluidly, except for when there's a lot of stuff going on. And the main problem that I had, the biggest failure of action commands that I've had is with the, what is it called, the thunder, the thunder machine that Luigi has, the bro attack.
Yeah.
So that's the one. That's obviously the one that most people are going to end up using just because it's just that good. But the problem is that every time the thundercloud that you grow and build to do more damage, every time it makes it to the final shape where it does the most amount of damage, the game lags out. And when the game lags out, so do my button presses. So I always fail it every other time that I use that attack. And the same goes for some other attacks that aren't that are like equally as like as large or very just like
that sounds like a hardware issue because I don't know what you're talking about. I've never had that issue.
No, I have those, like, even in like the very beginning, like when you're doing, like when you're connecting the islands, like during the cutscene of you flying on the plug and then connecting it to the ship, like my game lags out there too. Like it lags out in like very flamboyant moments of the game. So it's like that's just a hardware issue for me, but I don't know like how common it is for everyone else.
I mean, I can notice some frame rate drops, but as far as like the game like jittering, lagging, no, not so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like maybe a frame skip. Because when the 100 combo attack that you have to do to get like the special bonus that I spent 6 hours on. Like I also had issues there, and I looked online to see if I was crazy and if it's supposed to be this hard. And a lot of other people said they had the same issue. So I was like, I guess I'm not the only one having that issue, but
here's the issue with that, right? Because I mentioned that on a different episode that I spent the entire flight up to second flight up to North Carolina doing that same little mini game where you have to hit this stupid ball back and forth with your hammers 100 times. Which, by the way, you get the reward for that later in the game because I found it. You just get it earlier by doing that fucking mini game.
Well, that reward is you get two. There's two, so one for Luigi, one for Mario. But like doing that 100 combo one is one, and then getting 300 lucky strikes is another.
Yeah.
So you got the 300 lucky strike one then.
But my point being is that if you watch that stupid fucking ball, because you think it's supposed to be a rhythm thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I know it fucks up. If you watch the ball, especially when it's going slow, the timing for the hit changes every time you hit it. So it's not a constant thing that just gets faster as you get hits up. It fucks up because it's just random when it's going to come up and down. It's the most unfair thing I've seen because depending on how you hit it, it might arc a little bit higher, so it takes a little bit longer to get to Mario or Luigi, depending on where it's going, or it'll get there sooner. So I think that's what you were experiencing, because I know that's what I was experiencing. Because I'm usually really good at those rhythm kind of games. I kept fucking up over and over, and I didn't understand what the problem was until I was really watching that stupid fucking ball. So you not only do you have to, it's just random when it comes up and down, and on top of like this rhythm tempo being like fucked up. So it's just, I hated that shit. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I used like a lot of methods to try and get through it, and I know what you're talking about, but there's like another like design issue with that, because like I was hitting the ball even though I could very clearly see that my hammer was not even touching it. So yeah, there's like a lot of issues with that in itself, but I was like, it was just like I wanted to leave the like those kinds of issues in the end, because like it's just a hardware issue. It's not really like a game specific problem.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Corey, you got anything to say about the overworld gameplay or the RPG elements of the game?
As for RPG elements, I think there's like a nice balance of like, I guess, what is it? Variety, I should say, is the word I'm looking for. With the plugs, the gear that you get, even though there's not like a ton of gear unless you do some side quests and the one guy who makes you stuff. And you know, if you get like soft locked out of getting two accessories unless you get another stamp after reaching the last star thing, you know, you kind of have, it's not like a bunch of equipment, but the equipment does have certain bonuses to it that you can get. So it'll be like randomly increases a stat or does 20% more damage to enemies affected by an ailment or whatever. I think it didn't need to be complicated. So with the two characters, and they basically use the exact same gear, except for me, I picked Mario to do more damage as jumping and Luigi to do more damage as hammer. So I've kind of, because things are so expensive, like in the economy of that game is like very, unless you're using the plug to get more coins and doing a lot of other side quests, like you don't have a lot of money. You usually have enough money to buy maybe two things unless you sell everything that you have. And, that's kind of, at least that was my experience with it. But, I think it's manageable. The plugs and stuff make it interesting. The movesets kind of make things interesting. So as for like turn-based combat goes, like I think it scratches that RPG itch that somebody would be looking for, especially since the battles are very complex depending on the enemy outcome that you get in a encounter. So each thing being an event, like I said, is what makes them fun. But as far as like overworld stuff, like my favorite island is that Fire Ice Island. I think I just like the colors of it. That and the Ruins Island where you find like Bowser's troops. I think the color scheme of that one is also really cool. Like it's very vivid. I really like saturated colors and stuff like that. So like a lot of these things kind of appeal to me. The fast travel methods are strange because even though I have that gold pipe, I never use it.
Really?
I just
really?
never. I just never needed to use it because whenever I get to the lighthouse, it takes you back to the ship anyways. Unless you go back to.
Did you never go back to the islands like after the? Oh, that's right. You weren't doing
Yeah,
side quests.
I'm not
Yeah,
doing
that's-
side quests, so like I never use it. So for me, it's pointless. So it's like, oh, that's kind of cool, but like the one time I want to use it, I can't. Which is when you're at the islands trying to get to Bowser's place, and it's like you can't use it here. And it's like, well, that sucks. So okay, but the pipe to go back to other places because there are parts of the mainline story where it does make you backtrack to things that you've done before. Like that's kind of awesome that I don't have to sail back over to a certain thing because it's been linked to the ship, unless it hasn't been linked to the ship, and then you have to go find the island again because of that one event. It's not really like difficult to traverse through the world that you've uncovered so far, but the sailing kind of reminds me of Wind Waker, and though the ship is kind of a decent hub world because it has a lot of interesting characters that are kind of like actively doing stuff. If you've already found all the puzzles, like I kind of wish the island did have more like secrets to uncover as you got to other zones. Like it could have evolved and added more secrets, but once you found everything on that ship, it's like I'm just waiting to go somewhere. And there's a lot of dead area in that game. I mean, it's crazy because I zoomed out of the map when I was playing it in the beginning in the first zone. I was like, holy crap, this game is huge. To find that there's only like 3 levels per zone kind of thing. And it's like, oh, I thought there'd be like way more islands and stuff. Like, why have this much dead space between? Because some of those places, there's literally like 3 lanes before you actually find the island. And you just have to pick the right one and then swim around it. And I have this problem with having to uncover all of the water. So like I have to watch the ship fill the whole thing and be like, there, I've been everywhere there, go to the next one. And so I'm just staring at the ship as it's like sailing around. And sometimes it's funny because I'll forget to turn fast sailing off, which thank God they added fast sailing, but I wish it was even faster. Yeah. But they do give you that instant thing later. But when you're in fast sailing and you're like, I was trying to spot the monuments and things are just zipping by like 1,000 miles an hour. It's like, oh, that's kind of funny. But I think this sailing aspect is also just, I've probably waited for way more than I would like to, just to get to certain places because I understand I could tell the ship, go do this thing, and then I can walk around and do my own stuff. But it's like nothing interests me because I was like, I have to go to this next level. That's the thing I need to do. So then I click, go to that level, and just watch the ship just kind of move through the lanes. And it's literally like a buffer. I don't know if they're using it as like a loading or something, but it's like, I'm going to sit here for 5 minutes until I get to the area I need to be in so that I can go to that island I've not been to before. Or when you're looking for the hidden island, you have to go find all those little ones, which it does make it kind of easy because of the layout, but the stupid part is you have to go find them. Like, so it's literally just sail around, and nothing's necessarily hidden in the game. Like, there isn't anything that's ever like super tucked away outside of like the invisible. The invisible blocks.
I actually discovered it later in the game, but they do actually have a couple clever, like hidden rooms on some islands that just aren't on the map at all. Like you have to see them, you know what I'm saying, and actually get to it. So they actually do have a couple secret rooms with like I mean, generally it just has a bunch of items or coins in it, but still there are like a couple secrets to find.
There is some cool stuff where like if you're looking in the background of like an area you're walking on and you see stuff and like you see like an item box, you're like, oh, I can get down there, but I don't know how to get there from here. And then like eventually you'll find your way and you're like, oh, this is that thing I saw. And that's kind of nice. The thing that's cool though is like Nintendo's attention to detail is kind of like really awesome. So there's like hidden chests or the hidden blocks on like the snow island have snow on them because it's accumulated due to weather. So you can see the invisible blocks on that island because of that. Yeah. And it's like, oh, that's kind of neat. And then when you hit it, it knocks the snow off and stuff. So it's like, oh, there's like a lot of little things that they do in the game that are kind of neat. But yeah, I think the sailing is just kind of like, it's just something I have to endure to get to the parts that I do enjoy, which is walking around and stuff. Yeah, I mean, overall, I do think that they really kind of nail the RPG aspect. Outside of like, there's just random stuff that I have nitpicky things on. Like, for example, when you control Luigi in the overworld, it doesn't necessarily mean much for me to be able to jump with him because I never have to really do that, except for the double block where it's like Mario Luigi blocks where you're trying to get a special item. Like, I don't need to time any jumps with Luigi often. And then you already tell him, like, hey, go break those things or go pull up weeds or whatever. And the only thing that kind of sucks is that enemies can interact with him when you tell him to go do stuff, but they don't really interact with him if he's just, puppy dogging behind you. Mm-hmm. The other part of it is like when you're controlling, when you're in combat, like I know the DS was doing this or whatever, like the Game Boy Advance, I can't remember if Game Boy Advance had more than 4 buttons. I have one next to me.
No, so, I mean, it had A, B, and the trigger buttons.
It had A and B, and that's how you controlled Mario and Luigi. But, like, I know they were trying to do that in this one, but it kind of... I just wish that they just stuck with, like, a solid... Like, why control Luigi in combat with B when you have to select everything with A anyways? So they should have just... They should... Yeah, because I was trying to figure it out. It was, like, literally in the first tutorial where they're like, use B for Luigi, and I couldn't select the enemy... And it's like, oh, I have to use A to choose an action, then A to choose an enemy, then I use B. Like, just, if you really wanted to do some sort of skill-based gaming, you could have done random button presses. So it could have been like A, and then like do what a Legendary Dragoon does, where if there's a interruption in your combo, it swaps the X button to like circle, and so you... like get thrown off sometimes, and then it's like, oh crap, he was going to counter me, but I pressed the right button when the counter part came up so that my combo gets to keep going. I don't really need to press B to do stuff. And I feel like they just did it because they were like, we have to do this, and instead of it being like an actual like design choice that was super important to the game, because it doesn't really feel like it's important. It just feels like they needed to map the button that way. Like an afterthought that they were just like, well, all the other ones do it, so we should do that too. Yeah. Doesn't hurt the game, but it was just something I thought was weird.
Ultimately, a minor inconvenience. I agree with you, but it's like after a while, you just kind of get used to it. But yeah, I was for a long time. I was like pressing B, is like expecting it for Luigi to select whatever he's doing, and it just doesn't do it. Especially because I'm pretty sure that's how it worked in Superstar Saga. But yeah, it's ultimately a minor thing, even though it's a little aggravating.
Yeah.
All right, so we hit the biggest parts of the game. I guess we'll just move on into any kind of final thoughts or anything that anyone wanted to say about the game that didn't fit into the other categories. And moving on to like just final thoughts, give it a score if you want, and basically give it a recommend or don't recommend, or what you think what people would like about, what kind of people would want a game like this. Me personally, just a few things that I either forgot to mention was I didn't mention that Peach and the Toads were in this game because they got sucked up into the Isekai portal with Mario and Bowser. I don't know why, because Peach doesn't have anything to do in the game at all. Really? Yeah. I don't know why.
She hangs out with those other people.
Yeah, she hangs out with the idol group, and it kind of the only real thing I might say that she does is that she gives Irene, who's like the leader of the group, like I guess some kind of like someone to look up to, I guess, because Peach is cool, but she doesn't really do anything. Like, you could have thrown her out of the story entirely and nothing really would have changed. Even Bowser doesn't seem to really give two shits that she's around.
Yeah, they feel very cameo-y, and that's about it.
Yeah, like Bowser has a reason to be in the story, but Peach just doesn't. So I don't know. I just found her inclusion weird. Like it was really forced. It felt like, I don't know if like, I'm fine with Peach being in the game. Just give her something to do, Now, I'm not saying, oh, she's in here, she needs to be captured, but like let her do something. I don't know, anything. But there's that. There's the so I wanted to talk about like the little pseudo climax. So the game has some pacing issues, especially with the last part of it. I might not have had a big of an issue with it if I wasn't trying to like beat it for the podcast, but the game really builds up to this last big dungeon in the game, and the game even specifically says like, all right, prepare for the final fight. And you already know going into this fight that the big bad guy Zocket isn't going to be the final boss. He's trying to hatch like this weird Cthulhu egg thing. And you're like, oh, it's an RPG, so we're gonna fight this guy, and then the real final boss is gonna be that thing, and then the game will end, right? Wrong. In fact, these two are on the part where you're going to get into the pseudo ending. So you go through this whole dungeon and you fight Zocket, and then the egg hatches into the big bad guy. I know I'm going into spoiler territory here, but it's a Mario game. Don't worry about it. It's to hatch into the, because it does open to a criticism of the game that I wanted to say. That so it hatches into this new character called Reclusa, who's like this kind of insane, like weird, like god of seclusion or something bullshit like that. He's kind of like Bill Cipher, and he's kind of from Gravity Falls, if anyone gets that reference. But he's kind of jovially like jokey, but like still kind of really evil. And he's only the main bad guy of the game for like this last portion of the game. But I like him a lot in the fact that he just kind of shows up and taunts Mario and Luigi, because he just kind of shows up on the ship. He's like, hey, I wanted to run a couple names by you guys, see what you think about what I want to name my seclusion palace, essentially. And
he literally was born with violence.
Yeah, like he's just kind of fun, and I wish this character was the main bad guy throughout the entire game, because Zocket is not an interesting bad guy. In fact, the twist with Zocket you see coming like 800 miles away if you have a working brain, and he's just not fun. His gimmick is that he doesn't call people by their names, and he's very statistical. It's like, okay, that's not funny and not interesting. But this other guy's really interesting.
You're fighting Sheldon Cooper.
Well, it's fun. Yeah, exactly. It's funny though, because when you're fighting Reclusa in the real ending of the game, he like sends Mario and Luigi into like fucking the Matrix for a while, where he tries to, you see what's inside of like that perfect world plant thing that I told you about earlier, and it's kind of a mindfuck. It's a cool sequence, but it still kind of feels patty at that point, because I'm like, just let me kick your ass already, because there's like so many things like preventing you from kicking his ass. And not to mention that, I mean, maybe it's just because I was over prepared, but the last boss fight is not hard. I kicked his ass.
Yeah, we overpowered Mario.
Well, yeah, but I just gave what the game gave me. Or used what the game gave me. That's all I did. Especially because the last bros move, where you get to use the Great Conductor, who's basically the fucking god of this world that brought Mario and Luigi here in the first place. You get to use his like giant laser butt cannon that does like 8 bajillion fucking damage.
That sounds weird.
Yeah, it's fun. It's kind of a funny bros move. He has a butt cannon. You'll know it when you see it, but it's funny. But it does so much fucking damage. It's not even. It's so good. But anyways, I just wish he was the bad guy throughout the entire game. I feel like the game would have been better if he was just the bad guy from the start, and we didn't have like this like bait and switch. Because I don't mind like a climax extending, because it adds to the tension. Because Fate Grand Order does this a lot with its stories. You'll like get to the point where you think you're about to beat the big bad, and then something will go sideways to like turn the whole situation on its head and make everything worse. And you've already used like your plan A and plan B, and you're on your last legs, and you have to come together with the power of friendship or come up with a new plan on the spot to do some crazy bullshit. But the point is that the bad guy's not letting you go, because you're right there in front of him and you're the only thing stopping him. So he's going to try and kill you. So you have to like power through it on your last legs. And it makes for really epic engagements and fights and like moments. I love them. So doing that in a different RPGs, and again, I'm over-grandizing Fate, who is, much deeper stories, to a fucking Mario RPG, but like, I really expected it should have been, you fight Zocket, and then, you think you win, and you fight the big bad, and then the game ends. Because after you fight Zocket, and before you fight Reclusa for the last time, there's a whole, like, 7 hours of fucking gameplay, and I'm just like, stop fucking cock teasing me and just let me beat the game already. God damn it. Like, don't make me feel like the game's about to end and then extend it for another 7 hours. I'm already at that point where I want it to end. Not because I think the game is bad, but because I was just ready for it to be done. Yeah. I really thought that was the end of it, And there's just so much like game padding in the Bowser segment, especially finding his fucking castle. God, that was stupid. Because it's like, for whatever arbitrary reason, you can't use the cannon to get to his castle, and you have to follow this like breadcrumb trail of pipes through these smaller islands to get to it. And even after you do all that, you don't get a shortcut there, and you have to go back there later, and you have to go to the small islands to get to the stupid fucking castle. God, that was annoying.
Not to mention, you also have to wear a disguise and go through that camp of the island I enjoy to talk to everybody, to find somebody who tells you where those islands even are, because you cannot find them unless you do this.
Yeah, and like, so there, yeah, and I don't think Edwin mentioned it, but I know you mentioned it in our group chat. There's some, like, I don't mind the talking in this game, but sometimes there's just too fucking much of it, and people need to shut the fuck up and get out of my way, because there's so many redundant scenes. Like, there's these two characters called Chillette and Burnett.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like these two betrothed husband and wife, fucking the fire girl and the ice prince, and they're in love, and they're main characters for no other fucking reason that they're in love. That's it. Again, just using them to hammer home the connection part of the whole fucking game. But like, they're used as plot devices so much. There's one point in the game where it's like, oh, we're gonna have a wedding. All right, Mario and Luigi, you have to go help them get ready for their wedding. And I'm like, fucking why? Let them do it. Like, I'm trying to fucking save your world.
Yeah. Not
like,
only do they do that wedding part, but there's also the guy who comes up to try to throw off your trail, obviously. I mean, like, I did not do what he was suggesting, because it's clear that it's like, oh, but I wonder if you were to do what he was suggesting, what happens? Because I feel like there is a branching path to that story, but I mean, it's just like, here's some annoying thing for you to do to try to, I don't know, hold you off on successfully getting their wedding going. Like, the wedding's cool, but it's like, really? I have to go back to these islands I've already been to and do this thing?
Because at least when you're getting the islands that broke off, it's like, fuck, I mean, this is still clearly game padding, but at least I'm like doing something that pertains to the main story. But the whole story just halts for you to do this stupid wedding. And I was like, I don't even care about you two. Fuck off. You're not helping. You're just standing around and kiss each other. Who gives a shit?
I think it would have been a greater impact if they just did the wedding without you going to do anything, because you already have to do a huge quest line around both of them anyways. So it's like, I've already united you guys and your islands. So why do I have to do this other thing that's second to the most impactful part of your quest line, and that it's busy fetch quest work that has absolutely no impact on me at all?
Yeah. I just find it completely insane. It was like that, just small shit like that is really annoying to deal with. The game padding of going back, and I already said it earlier, but like, the game beats you over the head with the connections thing later in the game before you have to fight Reclusa, and you have to go you just talk to a bunch of people. And then also, me and Edwin had the same reaction to this one island. What was it? Bulbfish Island. That's what it was. The game was going pretty good, like pace-wise, but then you get to this island where there's barely any enemies, and you basically have to like solve the mystery of who stole these like bulbfish things.
Yeah, that's what I was playing when I got to Alaska.
Yeah, that's why I said, man, you showed Jordan the shittiest part of the game, because all that fucking area is just going around talking to people, and I'm just like, what the fuck? What? I don't mind talking to people in this game, but if it's only to be like, hey, go here, I'm like, okay, cool, got it, and I go there, beat up some people, and do the thing. But it's like, talk to this guy, talk to this guy, talk to this guy, talk to this guy, solve the mystery, talk to this guy, I'm like, God damn it, fucking shut the fuck up. God, like, you ruined the pacing with this island where there's just nothing here, and people like taking like 8 paragraphs to say something you could have said in like 2 sentences. Like, these characters aren't charming enough for me to want to listen to them this long, you know? Just get to the fucking point so I can get out of this fucking place.
Yeah, it's very funny because you're talking about the pacing part. It was like, literally the past like several hours and like islands before Bulbfish Island, I was actually having like the most fun with the game, and then it just went to a screeching halt when I went to that island.
Oh yeah, right up until that point, the game was having was really good pace wise, and then suddenly it came to a screeching halt with that. Started picking back up a bit, and then Bowser happens, and then we come to a screeching halt again, or rather, the wedding happens before Bowser does. So yeah, the game has some pacing issues. Overall, I mean, we're mainly harping on the bad shit, but it's because like breaking down the good stuff's going to take too long, but it's like, it's good. You know, the gameplay is fun. It has its small quirks about it. as far as like recommending this to someone, because it is a full price $60 game, but you do get a lot of content out of it. You know, we're harping on the length, but it is like a full fledged 40-hour long experience if you do all the side quests. And while I guess this is a game for someone who wants to play a RPG, but doesn't want to be bogged down with like a bunch of like, I don't know, messages about. Well, I mean, like bogged down with like a really serious story or like 100 characters or something like that. You know,
super
something
complex mechanics.
Yeah, it's like just something a bit on the light side, but you still want that length of an RPG to enjoy. Like there is some meat to bite into, but not like the whole steak. Um, so it's a light RPG. So if that's something you're looking for, this game is right up your alley. Or if you even just like the older Mario and Luigi games, I feel like this would satisfy you. I think it's very similar to those other ones. If not, I mean, I wouldn't call it the best. I mean, I've only played this in Superstar Saga, and I like Superstar Saga better. Um, but I really like this game. I don't know if I play it again in the future. The only reason I do that because you do have a couple times in the game where like you have a choice of something, and as I think Ed would mention it earlier, but like I guess some of them are redundant where like at some point you could choose whether or not Peach or Luigi gets kidnapped or whether you get like the accessories or like the weapons merchant on the ship or what Corey was saying whether or not you basically willingly sabotage those guys' wedding. And I think they're just flavor, but once you make a decision, you're just stuck with it. So that's really your only reason you'd want to replay the game, or if you wanted to replay it and try building Mario and Luigi in some kind of different, different RPG build, I guess. But other than that, I can't imagine why you'd play this game again because I don't really have a strong desire to. But I'm glad I played it. I'm not mad that I played it. I still really like it. I give it like a thumbs up. I mean, I know it's a meme, but I honestly would think it's more of like it's probably along the lines of about a 7 or 8 out of 10. I think for me, probably more along the lines of 7 because it has quite a few quirks with the game. Like the pacing issues are bad. Overworld stuff's kind of annoying, and like just a bunch of small things that bog down the overall experience. So I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10, especially because the game doesn't do anything like exceedingly well. It just does them all pretty good, you know. As far as if you're just curious about the game, maybe not pick it up, watch a playthrough. But if you really liked Mario and Luigi and you just want like a light RPG to sink your teeth into, but you don't want to like again be bogged down by some really serious story or whatever, I'd say it's worth a play. I really do. I think it's pretty good. I've seen and heard other people kind of giving this game shit. I think it's kind of unwarranted. I don't think the game is bad by any means. I think they probably play through the really slow early bit and get frustrated and stop playing it, and they don't give the game proper enough time to get to the good parts essentially. But yeah, 7 out of 10. If you like it, if it seems like something you like, you probably will. If not, man, maybe watch a playthrough, see if you like it. You know, it's a good game. I'm glad I played it, but I don't know if I play it in the future. I guess I'll skip over you, Jordan, because I don't know if you have anything to add.
Nothing really, and I haven't played it long enough to be able to even give it a score, so I wouldn't think it'd be worth getting my info.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Edwin, any last thoughts on the entire game, and what'd you think about it overall?
So, despite like all the negativity that I have said about it, I was like, it's just been I've just been playing it on like at like rough times throughout like the weeks and stuff, and also trying to finish it within a month and also get a bunch of other stuff done. So it's just been a little bit more stressful just to have time to play it and actually get through it. So like the bigger problem is just like actually trying to finish it because of how long it is, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just more of a time constraint situation for me. So it's like that's like the bigger parts of my problem, which is for like all the talking and like the fluff between the fighting and all that. So it's just more of a personal problem for me. It's not a terrible thing to have in a game. The game, the combat, the characters, the design, the animation, the puns that they have with like the idea that everything is like electronic or watt based, like the plug people, and then the names and all that. the extension corpse Zocket, which is like a wire cutter enemy. As like it's just really creative in all of that. I was like, I like the game. I was like, I don't know if I'd play it a lot. I mean, if I'd play it again, I think I mean, I liked playing it the first time. I was like, I was gonna buy it regardless if we were gonna have it for the game of the month anyway. So I was gonna enjoy it on my alone time, regardless, because of that's how much the trailer sold it to me. But I think there's like some other journalists that no one gives two shits about gave it like a 5. I was like, that's like seems pretty harsh, and like you said, it probably played for like the first few hours, which is very slow and handholdy, and you don't even get like all the abilities you can use throughout the rest of the game. But I would go on the same line and say that it's like, yeah, it is a 7 out of 10. It does have like a few nitpicky things about it, and then has weirdly odd amount of pacing issues, but it is a breeze at some point. It is challenging in others, but a lot of it is very optional. It has some weird choices in design, like not having the plug charging thing, and like forcing you to commit to rank up bonuses and stuff, and some other again nitpicky things. While I won't play it again. Maybe if the choices throughout the game like actually meant more and changed more than just the aesthetic of the game, like the wedding, it's like it makes it seem like it's a big problem, but it's a lot of choices are mainly to either hinder you for a little bit or just purely out of aesthetics throughout Ship Shape Island, or just for specific cutscenes or moments. It just seems kind of pointless to have them in there to begin with. I won't say which is which, but I feel like the first and last one of your choices are probably the most meaningful, even though it's still somewhat pointless. But it's like up to you to choose. But I do enjoy playing. I do like the bosses, even though one of them gave me like a harder time. Again, I'm not done with the whole thing. I do like the cutscenes are really nice, especially when Reclusa like took over the fortress. That was really cool, and I really like his design. It's cool. I just find it weird that it's basically a television head that came out of an egg. I don't know. I just found that part kind of weird.
Cthulhu gods don't need to conform to your sense of, I don't know, logic.
It's just weird. It's like, that is not the character I expected. Because like it looks like a dragon egg and it has like a dragon shaped eye. I was like, oh, it's a TV that hatched out of it. So when you said like what the story for like some of the story with the end game part is, like I was like, well, that's gonna be an interesting rest of the game for me.
Yeah,
but it was like, if you played if you played any of the Mario and Luigi games, then you'll probably enjoy this one, because I did play the GBA virtual thing on the Switch for the original Mario and Luigi. I was like, I was having kind of a slow beginning as well, so I guess it's like a normal thing that I don't remember dealing with in Bowser's Inside Story. So I guess it's just something that it's just the way the game is, and I just don't remember. So yeah, so I would overall recommend it if you do enjoy Mario and Luigi, or if you just enjoy like turn-based RPGs to begin with. You just have to choose what the good and bad parts are for yourself.
Alrighty. So Corey, what's your final thoughts about everything?
I mean, I got to finish it. I'm right at the last leg, I guess, maybe like the final approach, even though it lied about the final approach. I think that it's overall a pretty interesting and entertaining experience. I think that if you like RPGs but you don't have a lot of time, granted we are saying this game's long, But like if you're
But
gaming,
it can be taken in bite-sized
Yeah.
portions pretty easily.
so
I mean,
like
I was
yeah,
doing
if you
like
have
one
an
island a
hour,
day.
yeah, if you have an hour to kill, like you could probably 40 days later, you'll probably finish the game if you just kind of pick it up and play an island and like that's a wrap, you know. If you're a fan of hardcore RPGs, then you know this is going to leave you kind of hoping for more because there isn't like a lot of complex systems. Everything's kind of very straightforward and easy to understand. Outside of the button timing thing, so if you don't like QTEs, you're probably going to hate this game. But overall, if you're looking for a little more lighthearted RPG that's easy to digest, basically like junk food, I mean, you'd probably enjoy playing this. And don't let the Mario and Luigi label trick you from thinking it's a walk in the park, because there is some parts of the game that will test you pretty hard. And it's funny because it does it with a smile on, and I'm sitting on the couch like, you son of a bitch. You know, it's like I'm getting so mad at this game that's just like happy music all the time. Everybody's kind of interesting and not too serious but jokey, and it's just like I think that's what makes it worse when you lose and they're just kind of like giggling and you're like, that's enough. You know. But I think I would recommend it. I think a 7 is a really good score for it because of like there is some balancing and pacing issues and things like that. But I mean, I've definitely played worse games. And like, I mean, I just finished Parasite Eve. That's not a worse game by any means, but like to compare Parasite Eve to something like this, both of them are like RPG games, and but Parasite Eve is still a little bit more complex than like this game, but it is a Nintendo game. And if I had to recommend a Mario RPG remake or this, I probably would tell you to play the Mario RPG remake instead of this. But you know, I would also recommend that you play both of those games. Just play Mario RPG first because I do enjoy that one more. Not a bad game. It's entertaining. I'm having a lot of fun playing it. It's just some parts where I'm, you know, basically against the wall due to bad RNG or something like that. I kind of just get frustrated. But I also play my RPGs underleveled for the most part because it's like I think about it as a numbers game, and I think I've mentioned this before in another episode. It's like as long as I can do just enough damage to survive this, then I'm doing fine.
Yeah, just to mention, it's like the difficulty of the game. If you do die too much, it does give you the option to lower the difficulty, even though in the very beginning of the game, it doesn't have a difficulty setting.
Yeah, you have to die 2 times, and then it asks if you want to do that battle on an easier difficulty, which all it really does is boost Mario and Luigi's stats for the fight, and then it goes back to normal. So it's not a permanent difficulty change, it's just that experience. And then if you die again, it lowers it even lower to what's called cupcake difficulty. And
fucking insulting.
Yeah, and it's like I only had to do that one time, and that was because of the testing, like the Concord God guys, like, hey, I'm going to challenge your Brothership powers, and I don't pay attention to Mario and Luigi's like animations, so when they're doing the cup thing, it's like, which one's the real one? It's like, I have no fucking clue. So
you know, it's funny that you said that, and when it happened to me, I thought that was clever. It's like, oh yeah, I've been paying attention to them the entire game, so this is kind of a fun quiz because of, like, I would know this thing, and then you're like, I don't fucking know anything. I don't look at that.
Yeah, I was like sitting on the couch, like googling videos of like gameplay just so I could see what the animation looked like, and be like, I think it's this one, but. That fight in general is probably like my least favorite because it has a single win condition, which is to fulfill whatever his goal is.
Yeah,
instead
I wouldn't
of
really
like
consider that a fight.
Yeah, you can't beat him. You have to do the tasks because if you fail too many times, then he just auto kills you and it starts it all over again. There is no indication of how long this is even going to be. So if you purposely get killed all the way down to cupcake difficulty, you only have to do a Brothership move 2 times and then it's over. So that was much better than sitting here trying to play a stupid guessing game for 15-20 minutes. Yeah, but all that junk aside, I would recommend playing it. It's not going to be for everybody. A 7 out of 10 is a pretty decent score for this game. It's not very complex, but it is challenging. And yeah, it's an enjoyable experience for the most part.
Alrighty then. I think we have reached the end of that then. So yeah. Give it a look, give it a deeper look if it sounds interesting to you. If not, maybe watch someone play it and make a decision from there. But I think most of us here, liked it. Thumbs up, good job. Hope they keep making these games because I do like Mario and Luigi. I could use a light RPG, but the length is a thing. We'll just have to remember that for next time if that ever happens again. But aside from that, thank you for joining us. And Jordan, you can take us out from here.
All right. Well, I want to thank Udon for running us through with today's breakdown special. That was awesome. So we'll go ahead and go through with wrapping it up. Well, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Twitter, and YouTube channel to be notified of new episodes. Rate us 5 stars if you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel. And for all of you gamers out there, just remember to keep exploring, keep playing, keep listening. Until next time, this is the Mediocre.
Hey, this is Corey, and thanks for checking out Mediocre Rumble Brothers. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you didn't, that's fine too. If you'd like us to talk about any specific games, drop a comment below, or feel free to discuss your experience with the games that we've mentioned in the episode. You can also listen to our episodes prior to YouTube on our Spotify. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.